Today, I want to talk about something that affects all of us in different ways. Overthinking. It's a habit that many of us fall into without even realizing it. Overthinking is like a storm inside our minds, swirling thoughts and emotions into chaos. We get lost in hypothetical scenarios, imagining every possible outcome of a situation, and yet it often leads to stress, anxiety, and decision paralysis. But today, we are going to learn the art of not overthinking. Have you ever found yourself sitting on the edge of a decision, overanalyzing every possible outcome, worrying about what could go wrong, and getting stuck in an endless loop of what-ifs? I know I have. We've all been there. Overthinking consumes our mental energy and clouds our judgment. The truth is, it is a habit, and just like any other habit, it can be broken. In the book, The Art of Not Overthinking, the author beautifully explains that overthinking comes from a lack of trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your decisions, and trust in the process. We tend to doubt ourselves, overanalyze our options, and fear the consequences of making the wrong choice. But the more we overthink, the less we act. And as we all know, inaction is the true enemy of progress. The key to breaking free from overthinking is simplicity. The simpler we can make our decisions and actions, the more clarity we bring into our lives. Overthinking often leads to confusion, but simplicity brings peace. So how do we stop this cycle of overthinking? How do we embrace clarity and calm? The answer is simpler than we think. Focus on the present moment. Stop worrying about the future and let go of the past. Trust your instincts and take action, even when you feel uncertain. Recognize the pattern of overthinking. Overthinking often sneaks up on us, initially creeping in subtly before it consumes our thoughts and actions. At first, we might feel like we're simply being cautious or careful, considering all possibilities before making a decision. However, over time, this tendency to dwell excessively on a situation or decision can turn into a paralyzing habit that prevents us from moving forward in life. It becomes a repetitive cycle where we are constantly analyzing, reanalyzing, and second-guessing ourselves, and yet, the more we think, the less we seem to do. This is why the first and most important step in overcoming overthinking is to recognize when it's happening. Without recognition, overthinking can feel like a natural part of the process, even if it is ultimately a destructive force that holds us back. Recognizing the pattern of overthinking starts with awareness. In our busy, fast-paced world, we often don't give ourselves the space or time to notice how our thoughts are affecting us. We may be too caught up in the whirlwind of daily tasks, obligations, and deadlines to step back and observe our mental state. However, if we pay attention, we will start to notice the early signs of overthinking. It might manifest as repeating the same thought over and over, constantly replaying a conversation in your head, or wondering about the what-ifs of a decision. These repetitive, circular thoughts are a clear indication that we've crossed the line from thoughtful consideration into overthinking territory. The cycle usually begins with a simple decision or event that we feel unsure about. For instance, you might receive feedback on a project you've worked hard on, and instead of taking the feedback in stride, you start dissecting every detail. You worry about what the feedback means about your abilities, whether you're doing enough, or if people perceive you in a negative light. This might lead to you rethinking every decision you made while working on the project, replaying the entire process in your mind over and over again, trying to figure out where you went wrong or what you could have done differently. In the worst-case scenario, this kind of thinking spirals out of control, leading you to question everything about your abilities, your worth, and even your worth. This is where the pattern of overthinking becomes so destructive. It doesn't just stop at one thought or one decision. It tends to expand. Overthinking doesn't just occupy your mind in the moment. It spills over into other aspects of your life, making everything feel overwhelming. You might find yourself overanalyzing interactions with others, scrutinizing what you said or how you acted, fearing that you made a mistake or misrepresented yourself. You begin questioning past decisions, wondering whether you could have done something differently. You might even start to rehash conversations from years ago, fixating on small details and interpreting them over and over again. The mental strain of overthinking can be exhausting, both emotionally and physically. It often leads to anxiety and stress as we focus on scenarios that are either unlikely to happen or entirely beyond our control. Our brains become overloaded with unnecessary thoughts, leaving little space for clarity or peace. When we're caught up in the whirlwind of overthinking, we miss out on the opportunity to simply act. The more we think, the more we second guess ourselves, and the harder it becomes to make decisions with confidence. Recognizing overthinking requires a level of self-awareness. It's important to acknowledge that overthinking often stems from fear. Fear of making the wrong choice, fear of failing, or fear of judgment from others. This fear can create a sense of paralysis, where we feel like we can't move forward until we've thought through every possible outcome. In reality, however, this desire for certainty is an illusion. There is no way to predict the future with absolute accuracy, and constantly striving to do so only leads to frustration and stagnation. Once you recognize the pattern of overthinking, the next step is to create an intentional shift in your thinking. Instead of allowing yourself to spiral into endless analysis, begin questioning whether the thoughts are productive or if they're simply fueling your anxiety. Ask yourself, am I actually getting closer to a solution or simply spinning my wheels? If you notice you're not moving closer to clarity, but rather sinking deeper into confusion, it's time to step back. Acknowledge that you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Overthinking thrives on the belief that we need to control every outcome, but by recognizing the pattern, you can choose to release that control and embrace the uncertainty of life. One of the most effective ways to stop overthinking is to interrupt the cycle with intentional actions. This could mean physically changing your environment, focusing on something else to redirect your thoughts, or taking a break from the situation entirely. Simple mindfulness practices like deep breathing or meditation can help break the grip of overthinking and ground you in the present moment. The more you practice recognizing when you're overthinking, the easier it becomes to step away from the cycle and find peace of mind. In the end, recognizing the pattern of overthinking is not about condemning yourself for having these thoughts, but rather understanding that overthinking is a habit, and habits can be changed. With time, awareness, and intentional effort, you can learn to break free from the grip of overthinking and regain control over your thoughts. By practicing this recognition consistently, you can train yourself to approach situations with a clearer, calmer mind, making decisions with confidence and moving forward with purpose. Challenge your assumptions. One of the most common drivers of overthinking is the assumptions we make about situations, people, and even ourselves. Our brains are wired to find patterns and make predictions based on past experiences, and often we form assumptions without even realizing it. These assumptions, whether conscious or unconscious, can influence our thoughts and decisions in profound ways. They shape how we view the world, how we interpret others' actions, and how we respond to challenges. However, these assumptions can also limit us, holding us back from moving forward and making progress. To truly stop overthinking, one of the most powerful strategies is to challenge those assumptions. The first step in challenging your assumptions is recognizing that they exist in the first place. Many times we are unaware of the assumptions we hold. They often take the form of automatic thoughts that pop into our heads without much thought or reflection. For example, if you're presented with an opportunity to take on a new project at work, you might immediately assume that you're not qualified or that it will be too much responsibility for you to handle. This assumption might stem from past experiences where you felt overwhelmed or from insecurities about your abilities. But the reality is, the assumption is not necessarily true. In fact, the assumption could be holding you back from an opportunity for growth and success. If you challenge that assumption, you may find that you're more capable than you originally thought. Challenging assumptions is crucial because it allows you to see beyond the limitations you've placed on yourself or the situation at hand. When we make assumptions, we're essentially putting ourselves in a mental box. We tell ourselves what's possible and what isn't, based on beliefs or experiences that may not be fully accurate or helpful. In doing so, we limit our potential and keep ourselves stuck in a cycle of doubt and hesitation. By questioning these assumptions, we open ourselves to new possibilities and perspectives. For example, many people assume that failure is something to be avoided at all costs. We may assume that making a mistake will ruin our chances, embarrass us, or prove our incompetence. This assumption creates a fear of failure that can paralyze us and prevent us from taking action. But when we challenge this assumption, we can see failure in a different light. Rather than being a sign of defeat, failure becomes an opportunity to learn and grow. By embracing the possibility of failure, we free ourselves from the fear that holds us back and create space for progress. Challenging the assumption that failure is something to be feared allows us to take risks, try new things, and ultimately succeed in ways we never thought possible. Another area where assumptions often control our thinking is in our relationships with others. We make assumptions about people based on their actions, appearance, or even things we've heard about them. These assumptions can lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and missed opportunities for connection. For example, if you assume that a colleague doesn't like you because they didn't engage in conversation with you at lunch, you might spend hours overanalyzing their behavior. You might imagine all sorts of scenarios where they're upset with you, or perhaps you might even avoid them in the future. However, if you challenge that assumption and approach the situation with curiosity, you might discover that they were simply preoccupied with their own thoughts, or dealing with a personal issue. Challenging assumptions allows you to approach relationships with a more open mind and a willingness to seek understanding rather than jumping to conclusions. It's also important to recognize that our assumptions about ourselves are often the most limiting. We may assume that we're not capable of achieving something or that we're not worthy of success, which can lead to self-doubt and inaction. These assumptions may be deeply ingrained from past experiences or from societal expectations, but they don't define who we are or what we're capable of. By challenging the assumption that we're not good enough, we can shift our mindset and begin to recognize our strengths, talents, and potential. Challenging self-limiting assumptions is a key step toward personal growth and success. It allows us to step into our true potential, embrace challenges, and believe in ourselves more fully. The process of challenging assumptions requires self-reflection and a willingness to question our automatic thoughts. It requires us to pause and ask ourselves whether the assumptions we're holding are based on facts or simply on our own perceptions and biases. When we challenge our assumptions, we open ourselves to the possibility of seeing things from a different perspective. We learn to approach situations with curiosity and openness, rather than with fear and judgment. A helpful way to challenge assumptions is to ask ourselves a few simple questions. For example, is this assumption based on facts or feelings? What other possibilities could exist in this situation? What if I'm wrong about this assumption? These questions help us break free from our default thinking patterns and invite us to consider alternative perspectives. It's also important to remember that challenging assumptions is not about being overly critical or negative. It's about being open to the idea that our initial beliefs might not be the whole truth. It's about recognizing that our thoughts are not always accurate and that we have the power to change our thinking. When we challenge our assumptions, we create space for growth, understanding, and new possibilities. By making a conscious effort to challenge our assumptions, we can stop the cycle of overthinking and begin to approach situations with more clarity and confidence. We start to see that many of the barriers we've created in our minds are based on assumptions that don't necessarily reflect reality. Once we recognize this, we can make decisions with a clearer, more balanced perspective, free from the weight of unnecessary doubt and fear. This shift in mindset can lead to greater freedom, less stress, and a deeper sense of empowerment. Let go of the need for perfection. Letting go of the need for perfection is one of the most liberating actions we can take in our lives. In a world that often promotes idealized standards of success, beauty, and accomplishment, it's easy to get caught in the trap of perfectionism. We constantly compare ourselves to others, and we constantly strive to do things flawlessly. While having high standards and aiming for excellence can be motivating, the need for perfection can lead to unnecessary stress, anxiety, and missed opportunities. The fear of making mistakes or not meeting an unrealistic ideal can keep us from moving forward, trying new things, or fully enjoying the present moment. Perfectionism, at its core, stems from the belief that everything must be exactly right or else it's wrong. This mindset creates a paralyzing fear of failure, making us hesitant to take risks or even begin tasks because we worry that we won't get everything perfect. This fear not only holds us back, but also creates a cycle where we become our harshest critics. We focus on every flaw, every mistake, and every imperfection, which causes us to lose sight of the bigger picture. We might spend so much time and energy trying to perfect a single task that we fail to realize that perfection is an illusion. There is always something more to improve, something else to tweak, and some new level to reach. When we let go of the need for perfection, we allow ourselves the freedom to make mistakes, to learn from them, and to grow. In fact, mistakes are not the enemies of progress. They are part of the process. Embracing imperfection gives us the space to experiment, to try new things, and to explore opportunities without the fear of judgment. When we step away from perfectionism, we can approach life with more creativity, openness, and curiosity. We can be more flexible and adaptable because we understand that life doesn't always go according to plan, and that's okay. What matters is how we respond to challenges, not that everything unfolds exactly as we envisioned it. The need for perfection often arises from the belief that our value is tied to how well we perform or how we appear to others. We may fear that if we're not perfect, others will reject us or think less of us. But this belief is rooted in insecurity and doesn't reflect reality. No one is perfect, and everyone makes mistakes, whether they are visible to others or not. When we let go of perfectionism, we begin to accept ourselves as we are, flaws, mistakes, and all. We learn to value progress over perfection and to recognize that our worth is not determined by our achievements or the image we project. The constant striving for perfection can also create a significant amount of pressure. We place an immense weight on our shoulders, believing that anything less than perfect is a failure. This pressure can lead to burnout and a lack of joy in the things we do. When we're obsessed with perfection, we become so focused on the end result that we miss out on the journey. The process of growth, learning, and creating is just as important as the final outcome. In fact, it's often in the moments of imperfection that we discover new solutions, new ideas, and new ways of thinking. Embracing imperfection allows us to appreciate the journey itself rather than fixating solely on the destination. Letting go of perfectionism doesn't mean lowering standards or settling for mediocrity. It's about releasing the need for everything to be flawless and recognizing that done is better than perfect. It's about allowing yourself to move forward even when you don't have everything figured out. It's about taking risks and accepting that some mistakes are inevitable, but they are not the end of the world. In fact, they are often the most valuable learning experiences we can have. When we let go of perfection, we also become more compassionate toward ourselves. We stop being so critical of our mistakes and start seeing them as opportunities to learn and improve. We give ourselves permission to be human, to fall short, and to keep going. The more we practice self-compassion, the less power perfectionism has over us. We become more accepting of our limitations and more willing to embrace the process of growth. This mindset shift is key to overcoming overthinking because it takes the pressure off and allows us to take action without the fear of failure holding us back. Letting go of the need for perfection also opens the door to deeper connection with others. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we encourage others to do the same. We create an environment where mistakes are not only accepted but embraced. This fosters authenticity and vulnerability, which are essential for meaningful relationships. When we let go of the pressure to be perfect, we create space for genuine, honest connections where people can be themselves without the fear of judgment. In a world that often tells us to strive for perfection, letting go of that need can feel like an act of rebellion, but it is one of the most empowering decisions you can make. It allows you to step into your full potential, to embrace the messiness of life, and to appreciate the beauty in imperfection. Life is not about getting everything right. It's about living authentically, learning from mistakes, and growing along the way. So, the next time you find yourself obsessing over a flaw or fearing that something isn't perfect, remind yourself that imperfection is not only inevitable. Let go of the need for perfection and embrace the freedom that comes with being imperfectly, wonderfully you. Trust yourself. Believe in your ability to make decisions and trust your instincts. You've got this. Trusting yourself is one of the most powerful acts of self-empowerment you can practice in your life. Yet it's something many of us struggle with, often doubting our decisions, questioning our abilities, and second-guessing ourselves at every turn. It's easy to look outside of ourselves for validation or to rely on others' opinions. But the truth is that you are the expert on your life. Trusting yourself means having confidence in your ability to make decisions and trust your instincts, even when things are uncertain or the path forward is unclear. When you trust yourself, you believe in your own judgment and intuition. It's the understanding that, despite the challenges you may face, you have the inner resources to navigate through them. Trusting yourself is not about always knowing the perfect answer or making the right decision every time. It's about believing in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. It's about knowing that even if things don't go as planned, you'll learn and grow from the experience. Trusting yourself means not waiting for the external approval or confirmation from others before moving forward, but believing that you have the strength and wisdom to figure things out on your own. Self-doubt often creeps in when we are faced with important decisions, whether it's a career move, a personal relationship, or even a small day-to-day choice. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the possibilities and the fear of making the wrong choice. The fear of failure can paralyze us, and the need for perfection can lead to hesitation. But the reality is that no one has all the answers, and life rarely offers a clear-cut right or wrong option. There is always an element of risk, uncertainty, and learning involved. By trusting yourself, you embrace that uncertainty and move forward, knowing that even if you make mistakes, you will be better for it. Trusting yourself also means letting go of the need for external validation. While feedback from others can be helpful, it's important to recognize that other people's opinions are just that, opinions. They are shaped by their own experiences, biases, and limitations. If you constantly seek validation from others, you may find yourself swayed by external forces, losing sight of your own values and desires. The truth is, no one else can live your life for you. Only you can truly understand what feels right for you, what aligns with your values, and what fulfills your needs. When you trust yourself, you allow your intuition to guide you, instead of relying on others to dictate your path. Another crucial aspect of trusting yourself is the ability to make decisions without constantly second-guessing. Every day we are bombarded with choices, big and small, and it can be easy to become overwhelmed by the pressure to make the perfect decision. But the key to overcoming this is realizing that no decision is set in stone, and very few choices are irreversible. Trusting yourself means knowing that you can make a decision, take action, and adjust course if needed. It's about giving yourself permission to make mistakes without seeing them as failures, but as opportunities to learn and grow. The fear of making a wrong decision can hold you back, but when you trust yourself, you give yourself the freedom to take action and adapt along the way. The more you trust yourself, the more you cultivate resilience. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, and no one is immune to challenges, setbacks, or disappointment. However, trusting yourself equips you with the confidence to handle whatever comes your way. When you trust yourself, you don't see obstacles as insurmountable roadblocks, but as challenges that you have the strength to overcome. You learn to navigate difficulties with a sense of calm and determination because you know that you have the inner resources to persevere. This trust in yourself becomes a foundation upon which you can build a life that is authentic, fulfilling, and resilient. It's also important to recognize that trusting yourself is a process that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't mean that you'll never feel doubt or uncertainty. Even the most confident people experience moments of self-doubt. However, what sets them apart is their ability to push through those moments and trust that they have the ability to figure things out. Over time, as you consistently make decisions and learn from your experiences, your confidence in yourself will grow. You'll begin to trust your judgment more, and you'll see that even when things don't go according to plan, you always have the strength to adapt and move forward. Ultimately, trusting yourself is about believing in your worth and your ability to navigate life with grace and wisdom. You are capable of more than you may realize, and the more you trust in your own ability to make decisions, the more empowered you will feel. Let go of the need for external validation. Stop second-guessing your every move and embrace the truth that you've got this. You have everything you need within you to make the right choices, handle the challenges, and create the life you desire. Trust yourself because you are more than capable.